Hello and welcome to Web Services Training by One Test Solution on SOAP UI and SOAP UI Pro. Let's quickly review the agenda, what we are going to talk about today. We will first understand what exactly a web service means, what are the different communication protocols which are used in web services. We'll talk a little bit on XML visual files. Then we'll see what are the differences between SOAP UI and SOAP UI Pro. How and what exactly a manual testing and automation testing is as far as the API or web services testing is concerned. For automation, Groovy scripting comes into picture. We'll talk a little bit more on that. And also we'll try to understand why automation testing sometimes become really important as far as web services testing goes. Okay, so now what exactly a web service is? I will try to put it as simple as I can. Web service is nothing but a piece of software which can be written or developed in any programming language and in any operating system, because web services are going to be independent of programming as well as the operating system. Now, another thing that we need to understand is web services makes itself available over the internet to be consumed by any client. If you see here on the right hand side, there is a small .NET program written. The name of the web service is OTS. Here you can see public class OTS. So the name of the service is OTS. And in this web service, there are two methods which are exposed. One is fee detail and other one is course detail. So what exactly a method is going to be? These methods are sometimes called as operations as far as SOAP UI terminology goes. And in the programming world, these are the normal methods which will be exposed as a part of service. If you look at this fees detail method, what it does, it takes course name as an argument and it returns the fee of a particular course. Let's say if a web client or a user entered SOAP UI, so it will return $399, and likewise for VSTS $499 and for Cucumber $199. If something else, then it will return 0. That's how the implementation is. Don't worry much about the implementation. There is another method called as course duration. What it does, it takes course name as an argument and it returns the number of days in that course. Okay, let's quickly run this web service and we'll talk more about it. So I ran this service locally. Here, if you'll see, there are two operations or the methods which are exposed by this web service. One is course duration and fee detail. Now if you click on course duration, here you will see the parameter. So when we are looking at the code, let me open it. So if you see this course duration, it takes course name as an argument. Let's say if user will enter SOAP UI, it should return 45. So I will go and enter SOAP UI and I will click on invoke. So this method is going to be called, and you see here 45 has been returned. Now if you look at this this particular portion here, this is how a request looks like. It is going to be transmitted over the internet in XML format. Okay, XML is nothing but a representation of information in a specific XML in a specific grammar. Now if you see here course duration, course name, these are called as tags. You can read more about XML on Google, and if in case you are not familiar with XMLs and all. Now if you go here, there was another operation called as fee detail. its behavior is also the same, but it returns a different it returns a fee detail of the course entered. Let's say if user entered VSTS, it will return 499. Okay, so this is how a web service looks like. Right now I am invoking this service locally, but in reality what happens is when this service is hosted on a server, then any web client can access it, depends upon the accessibility. Okay, let's say right now if you go to one test solution, you see let's navigate to home page, and if you go to any course detail, okay, you click on course detail, here you see 399. Now behind the scene, onetestsolution.com is behaving as a web client and it is invoking OTS service, and the name of the method which it is calling is course fee or fee details. Okay, so that's how a web service works in a real world. Now there may be multiple services. For example, if you click on login or let's say click on here contact us. Okay, if you click on contact us, there may be a service. What it may take is name, email, phone, subject and message, and click on send. It will take all these data and will send. So there may be a service for send. Okay, right now that implementation is not there, but that's how web services can be designed and can be consumed by a web-based application or a web client. Okay, now next thing, okay, so we saw that web service uses an standardized XML messaging system. Okay, now next thing that we need to talk about is WSDL. Okay, so let's go back to the same web service. We'll click here and click on this service description. Now this is how a WSDL file looks like. In a simple terms, WSDL is nothing but a contract. Okay, WSDL talks about in detail what a web service is supposed to do, how many methods it will have, and what type of different parameter it takes. It also talks about what will be its location or where it will be hosted. Right now this OTS web service is running at local, so that's why you see here this URL. And if you go here types, it talks about how many different type of methods are there. If you go to messages, you will see the parameters. So in a nutshell, it's a contract which talks about what a web service is supposed to do. In terms of implementation, sometimes developer first write the WSDL document and then they start writing the methods or start developing the web service. Or there may be a different approach also for development. They can first write a method and then later they can expose the WSDL file. So, but anyways, we will not get into the detail of implementation, how web services are developed. Our main focus is going to understand how we are going to test a web service. Okay, now as far as the testing is concerned, first we need to understand in a web service, let's say there are two methods. So here one is course duration and other one is fee detail. So we need to understand in request how many arguments or parameter it takes. So, and what are the different data types it will have, because we have to ensure we do the positive and negative validations. Then once a web client gives a call to the service, then web client will get a response back. So there will be a proper structure of the response. We have to understand that response as well in order to do the proper testing. So in web services, we will be testing the request as well as the response both. Okay. Now, next thing we need to understand the difference between SOAP UI and SOAP UI Pro. So the first and very important, SOAP UI is free of cost and Pro is a paid version. Now, most of the time people ask whether we should implement a project with SOAP UI or SOAP UI Pro, because they look at the website of SOAP UI, but there is not much difference in cost. So again, it depends. In SOAP UI Pro, there are a lot of good features like data-driven development. Then there are a lot of reporting features. Then data sync. There are multiple steps which makes job little easy. But it does not mean that we cannot do all that in SOAP UI. We can certainly do all those stuff in SOAP UI as well. Certainly little more programming will be required. But during this entire course, we will study in detail about the Groovy scripting and the implementation. So anyone can do their work or the project in both SOAP UI and SOAP UI Pro as per their need. Now, next thing that we need to understand is manual testing versus automation testing. Now, let's say this web service, okay, course name. If I have to test this web service, so there are three positive values for the course name, VSTS, SOAP UI and Cucumber. Then there will be negative validation that we need to do. So basically, we are going to run the same thing with multiple set of data and multiple set of data combinations. Of course, the effort is going to be more. But if we automate this, it's going to be really quick and probably the effort on the automation will not be too much. So ROI seems to be really high as far as the web services automation goes. And in a real world, sometimes that we see is one web call, one web method or an operation is going to be independent, dependent from other. Let's say first user has to log in. So there is a login API or login web service. Then user will get the response back at, let's say, session ID. Using that session ID, user has to go and do some different operation or invoke some other method. So there will be a lot of things that we have to, there will be a lot of things that are going to be reused across the multiple methods of a service. If we start doing it manually, then what we need to do is we copy the data from one place and paste it at a different place. So it becomes sometimes little complicated. Now those things are very easy to automate and it saves really a lot of time. So that's why this web service automation becomes very easy and handy to implement. Now in SOAP UI and SOAP UI Pro, we will use Groovy scripting for automation. Groovy scripting is nothing but a superset of Java, and in fact SOAP UI is built out of Java APIs. It uses a lot of Java APIs. So we'll study all those in detail. We have multiple topics which are lined up for Groovy scripting, where we will understand in and out of it as far as the web services testing is concerned. We have already spoken about the importance of automation testing in web service, because there are a lot of work that can be minimized and will be less error prone if we'll do it through automation. And it becomes very fast as well, and it's not too complicated with respect to the functional automation testing. Okay, now as far as this course is concerned, so next thing we are going to understand how to do the manual testing and how to play around with SOAP UI tool. That's going to be our next target. Then we'll talk about Groovy scripting, and we'll start with the automation. We'll explore each and every feature of SOAP UI and SOAP UI Pro. In the later sessions, we'll talk about the framework development on SOAP UI and Pro both using Groovy scripting. So that's pretty much for this video. Thank you so much.